everyone, welcome back. It's been a while. Today I'm bringing you a mammoth book haul. You may have noticed, you probably haven't, but you may have noticed that this often happens around this time of year. It was my birthday a couple weeks ago. It was a couple weeks ago now? Yes. And I also, before that, went to Chicago to visit my dad and my family there. And I very much enjoyed experiencing a new city's bookshops or bookstores. When I'm in America, I always feel the need to use American terminology. They're bookstores, not bookshops, but only when they're in America. Oh, I've just realised you can see the Jellycat Lion. Why not? Join us for today's video. So obviously this is a mix of things that I picked up in Chicago. Honestly, it is incredible that I managed to get the amount of books that I did back here. I obviously received some for my birthday. I bought a few on the day of my birthday because I went to the London Review bookshop for the first time, which I would highly recommend. Really enjoyed it. It's a little excessive. Whilst I was in Chicago, I went to a lot of great bookshops. I think I'm going to do a little Substack post about my favourite ones. I mostly focused on used bookstores. I'm enjoying them for multiple different reasons at the moment, but I did go to some nice neighbourhood indies as well. Oh, and finally, of course, I went to Hay Festival and picked up a few books there as well. So I have at least been accumulating this for about 3 months. But first, let me go get something. So Zach got me this incredible Dickens collection. This is half of it. Here we go. So these are obviously, I mean, they're lovely, and I hope I will be able to read some of them, like actually read them. They're obviously kind of like a decoration piece as well, because they are just the most wonderful colour combinations. So these are the Oxford Illustrated Dickens, and I think they are from 1967. Yeah, I think 1966 or 1967, sometime at the end of the 60s. You can tell because of the amazing colours, I think. But they do have an Oxford Illustrated Dickens, which came out, I think, in the 80s, which is also really colourful, but just a slightly different vibe. But I love these. They've been in one of my local bookshops ever since I first went in. They've been there for like 2 years, sitting in the corner, waiting for someone to buy the whole set. I'm the very proud recipient of them now, and I will take good care of them. But the interesting thing about these books is that there's a lot I haven't heard of, and I imagine would be actually quite difficult to get hold of as well. So obviously all the major novels are here, but there's like some of his journalism and other Christmas stories that I've never heard of, and it's the full set. I think it's 21 volumes. Shall I take you through them all? We'll do it quickly, shall we? We've got Nicholas Nickleby, Martin Chuzzlewit. I haven't read quite a lot of the earlier ones. Our Mutual Friend, which I really want to reread soon. It's not gonna focus. There we go. A Tale of Two Cities. So this one's called Christmas Books. This one does have a Christmas Carol in it. Christmas Books, Little Dorrit, which I read last year. So this is The Uncommercial Traveller and Reprinted Pieces. So I think, yeah, some of this is his journalistic work. And then we've got, so Christmas Stories, separate from Christmas Books. It's quite a chunky book, actually. Pickwick Papers. Hard Times, probably one of my least favourite Dickens, this one. David Copperfield, one of my favourite Dickens. The Old Curiosity Shop. Bleak House. It's interesting, like the thickness of some of these books, because they have different page thicknesses. So Bleak House looks kind of fairly normal, even though it's obviously one of the biggest books. The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which I read a very long time ago, is the last book he published and the last book he wrote and didn't finish. One of the most famous, but not my favourite. The one I haven't read. Master Humphrey's Clock and A Child's History of England. Sketches by Boz, Dombey and Son. American Notes and Pictures from Italy, so that's his travel writing. And finally, Barnaby Rudge. So yes, don't they look so beautiful together? I'm going to have to find the perfect place to put them. I've been attacked by books. I think with that collection and the cloth-bound classics that I have and the just classic Penguin classics that I have, I probably have more Dickens on my shelf than any other author. I'm going to go in absolutely no order at all because they made their way onto my desk in a big pile. I'll come a little closer just so you can see the covers a little bit better. But the first one on top of the pile, because I bought it just the other day, is The Player of Games by Ian Banks, and this was being sold by my library for £1, so I picked it up. I think it's actually the second in a series he's got called The Culture, so I'm going to have a little look for the first one before I get to this one. But I've been meaning to read more Banks for ages, a much loved sci-fi author. I read The Wasp Factory quite a long time ago now at university, and I did enjoy it. But yes, I would like to read more of his work. I also just was drawn to this cover, the kind of retro vibes. I bought this one at the London Review bookshop. So this is Funeral Nights by Kinfam Singh Nonkinri. And you may have seen these around, these And Other Stories books. They all look a little bit like this. So they have like the beginning of the book on the cover. First of all, I'm just drawn to these And Other Stories books. And they have quite a lot of interesting work actually, which I am intrigued by. But this one I hadn't heard of before, and I was just drawn to it in the shop. I think it is supposed to be quite a challenging book. It's obviously pretty chunky. I think it's like a selection of narratives which interweave with one another, something like that. A group of friends journey to a remote part of West Khasi Hills in northeast India to witness the performance of an ancient lingam funeral ceremony that lasts 6 days. By mistake, however, the group arrives early, so they wait stuck in the jungle, spending their nights around a fire in the middle of a spacious hut built for them especially, sharing stories in what proves an unexpected journey of discovery. Some of the praise for the book I think is quite revealing. A novel of huge ambition and tremendous appetite, or is it a novel at all, says Jerry Pinto. So you might be able to see why I was drawn to this. Something else I picked up in the London Review bookshop is Drift Glass by Samuel R. Delany. They had a good selection of Delany actually. I'm on the hunt for a nice older edition of Dahlgren, but I just have not been able to find one that I like yet. But I was drawn to this, and I wonder if it's part of a series, Penguin science fiction series. It's a apparently definitive volume of his stories. He's written a lot, so I can't imagine that this will be the last Delany short story collection that I buy. But yes, I thought this was a particularly nice edition. I picked this up at Hay Festival from the Oxfam that they had there, which actually had a really great selection of books, and I will definitely be going again next time I go. Mostly for the cover. I haven't read any Michael Moorcock. Again, he's much loved in the sort of sci-fi speculative fiction community. I'm not sure this is his best work, but just look at this cover, okay? We all know I'm a sucker for these like retro covers. Another of these little mass market paperbacks or whatever that they don't make anymore, and I really, really wish they would. Love these little books, they're so convenient. I'm so tempted to tell you exactly where I bought every single book, but I know you don't care. Anyway, pick this one up in Chicago, and it's actually a Scottish novel. It's Witchwood by John Buchan. And again, I'm not going to go into my whole philosophy of how one shops in a used bookshop. With a lot of these things, it's just things I was drawn to in the moment rather than having any particular method. So I sort of like used bookshops at the moment over like places which are selling new, because I'm less familiar with the selection. Michael Moorcock apparently selected this as one of the 100 best fantasy books. Set against the religious struggles of 17th century Scotland, this is a gripping atmospheric tale in the spirit of Robert Louis Stevenson. So this is a recommendation from the lovely Varsha. I know she really likes this novel, and so when I saw it, I thought I would pick it up because I also think this might be a nice one for autumn as well. Anyway, my copy actually does not have a blurb on the back. So in The Lightkeepers, we follow Miranda, a nature photographer who travels to the Farallon Islands, an exotic and dangerous archipelago off the coast of California, for a one-year residency capturing the landscape. The Lightkeepers upends the traditional structure of a mystery novel: an isolated environment, a limited group of characters who might not be trustworthy, a death that may or may not have been accidental, a balance of discovery and action, while also exploring wider themes of the natural world, the power of loss, and the nature of recovery. It's what I'm supposed to have read for a buddy read, but I am way behind. But this is Hild by Nicola Griffith. I really searched high and low for this one. I believe it is historical fantasy, and it just sounds right up my street. I'm really looking forward to reading it when I finally do get around to it. I'm hoping to very soon. In 7th century Britain, a new religion is coming ashore, and small kingdoms emerging frequently and violently. Hild is the king's youngest niece, with a glittering mind and a natural authority. Hild establishes a place for herself at her uncle's side as the king's seer, and she is indispensable as long as she doesn't lead him astray. The stakes are high, life and death for Hild, for her family, and increasingly for those who seek protection of this strange girl who seems to see the future. And I think it's based on the life of St. Hilda. And yes, I think it's also a series, and I'm just really excited about it. Apparently there's a lot of monotonous detail, which, if you know me, you know I love. I saw a lot of Gene Wolfe around, a lot more than I was expecting. I don't know if just because I'm, more aware of Gene Wolfe than I used to be. I mean, he is a giant in the realm of SF. But I also didn't know that he was considered a local author in Chicago. So I think that might have also been why there was a lot more Gene Wolfe around. There were loads of books that I considered, but I ended up picking up The Fifth Head of Cerberus. Anyway, if you don't know, I'm currently making my way through the Book of the New Sun, which is his magnum opus kind of thing. Far from Earth, two sister planets, St. Anne and St. Croix, circle each other in an eternal dance. It is said a race of shapeshifters once lived there, only to perish when humans came. But one man believes they can still be found, somewhere in back beyond. Apparently in this book he skillfully interweaves three tales to create a mesmerising pattern. I did look for Peace. I really wanted to pick up a copy of Peace, but couldn't find it anywhere. I got this in the London Review Bookshop, and if you've been following my reviews, you'll know I've already read this, and I really liked it, and I wanted to show my support in an indie bookshop rather than ordering it online. So I picked up Gog Magog by Jeff Noon and Steve Beard. Yeah, I really like this one. I'm really looking forward to the second part coming out later this year. I also think the cover is great, especially for this kind of book. They actually employed an illustrator. We like it. So when we were in this Oxfam at Hay Festival, it was obvious that someone somewhere had donated an entire Charles de Lint collection. Not an author I'd ever heard of, but as I was looking through the stuff, I just saw more and more of his work, and I looked him up, obviously, and I was just kind of working out who he was, because I saw he'd been published under fantasy and sci-fi presses. And yeah, I think he's been a very prolific fantasy author, I think. And it's kind of compared a couple of times to Little Big and urban fantasy. And we know I liked Little Big, which I read earlier this year, or finished earlier this year. So I've got two of his books, which I now realise I haven't got the first in a series, because he has this whole series based in a particular city. A lot of them had terrible covers. So we've got Forest of the Heart. I think this one could be a standalone. So in this one, apparently he brings the mythic traditions of many cultures into a seamless cloth, bringing folklore, music and unforgettable characters to life on modern city streets. So it is sounding quite Little Big like. And this one I think is part of the big series, but it's not number one. But most of the series is made up of short stories, and I'm hoping that I can just dip in with this one anyway. So yeah, it's his Newford series, I think it's called. Newford is the quintessential North American city, tough and streetwise on the surface and rich with hidden magic for those who can see. This cover, I mean, look at that. Incredible early noughties vibes. Oh no, 1999, there you go. Ugly, but kind of nonetheless so nostalgic. I also was drawn to this one mostly for the cover, and I think it's a Dutch classic. I think it's considered this author's masterpiece. Did I say it's called The Discovery of Heaven? It's by Harry Mulisch, and again I think it's a slightly challenging read. Discovery of Heaven begins with the meeting of Ono and Max, two complicated individuals whom fate has mysteriously and magically brought together. They share responsibility for the birth of a remarkable and radiant boy who embarks on a mandated quest that takes the reader all over Europe and to the land where all such quests begin and end. This one I picked up on a whim. Whenever I see Small Beer Press, which I think is no longer publishing or going on a hiatus, which I'm really sad about, they publish, I think it's Kelly Link's press, and they publish slightly more out there sci-fi and fantasy. This is a short story collection by Zen Cho, 19 sparkling stories that weave between the lands of the living and the lands of the dead. Spirits Abroad is an expanded edition of Zen Cho's Crawford Award-winning debut collection. Anyway, first of all, cover is so good. Not that you can really see what it's called, but who cares? And second of all, people seem to really love this one. I had to pick up a Patricia McKillop while I was there, having just read Umbria and Shadow and really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I think I ripped this cover at some point, but I've put some tape on it now. Unfortunately, this is a different shape to my Umbria and Shadow, so I don't know if it's going to mess up my future McKillop collection. But she is a fantasy author who is sort of much loved. She had this series of just the most beautiful covers, like hand painted. I can't remember who the artist is. Kanuko Y Craft did these beautiful, beautiful covers. And this one is called The Bell at Sealy Head. And all we've got on the back is Sealy Head is a small town on the edge of the ocean with a big secret. So, why am I not holding this right? So, one of our lovely book club members, Kelsey, recommended Vert and Jeff Noon's work after I talked about how much I really liked Gog Magog, because obviously he wrote that with Steve Beard. I think this is actually his first novel, way back in the olden days of the 90s. I'm looking forward to reading it. I think it's set in the fictional Manchester, a brightly innovative and highly entertaining novel from the celebrated pioneer of urban fantasy. Vert is exemplary of Jeff Noon's seminal style, bold, evocative and accomplished. I also particularly like this cover that I found it in. I had recently watched a TikTok where someone recommended this, so I picked it up. Kiss of the Spider Woman by Manuel Puig, and it's an Argentinian novel, I believe. The Kiss of the Spider Woman is a graceful, intensely compelling novel about love and victimization. In an Argentine prison, two men share a cell. Both are gradually transformed by their guarded but growing friendship and by Molina's obsession with the fantasy and romance of the movies. I looked at many, many Erdrich novels. She is well represented in the used bookstores of Chicago. And I settled on Love Medicine, which is the first in the Love Medicine series. And obviously we read The Last Report on Miracles at Little No Horse a few months ago for book club. And that is in that series. And I really enjoyed that book. So I thought I'd go back to the top. I also looked at various copies of Love Medicine. And this one I was most drawn to is kind of the nicest version. So this one tells the story of two families, the Cashpaws and the Lamartines, now resequenced by the author with the addition of never-before-published chapters. I think this could have been her debut novel as well, not just the start of that series. So, yes, I know I want to read more Erdrich. I'm really drawn to her work in general. So, we're going to start from the top. So, next we have The Man with the Compound Eyes by Wu Mingyi. When a tsunami descends a massive island made of trash crashing into the coast of Taiwan, two very different people, an outcast from a mythical country and a woman on the verge of suicide, are united in ways they never could have imagined. A work of lyrical beauty that combines fantasy, reality and dystopian environmental saga. Here is the English language debut of a new and exciting award-winning voice from Taiwan. And Le Guin wrote about this book. We haven't read anything like this novel ever. A new way of telling our new reality, beautiful, entertaining, frightening, preposterous, true. Wu Mingyi treats human vulnerability and the world's vulnerability with fearless tenderness. Never heard of it before, and I am looking forward to reading it. Had to get myself some more William Maxwell. Really enjoyed So Long, See You Tomorrow. Also enjoyed his debut novel that I read earlier this year, and I want to read all of Maxwell's work, hopefully one day. So I got All the Days and Nights, the collected stories. So this is 21 stories. Together they make up what William Maxwell calls a natural history of home. This I picked up purely for the cover, basically, which is just so wonderful. It's called Greenstone by Sylvia Ashton Warner, and I believe it's set in New Zealand. And she is a New Zealander. From its opening lines, Greenstone pulls the reader into the heart of a huge, eccentric family, into an exotic landscape, into an atmosphere pulsating with life. It is a novel about an impossible marriage out of which an impossibly wonderful world of love and closeness is born. Okay, I forgot that I actually got two William Maxwell's. So I also got his book, Time Will Darken It, and this is a novel. When Austen King plays host to his distant southern kinfolk, he unwittingly sets in motion events that will threaten his marriage, his law practice, and his standing in the community. Time Will Darken It is further evidence that Maxwell is one of our national treasures. Also had to pick up my next Prue. Been really enjoying Annie Prue's work. So this is Accordion Crimes. It's a masterpiece of storytelling that spans a century and a continent. And I think it's about a selection of people who all linked by their successive ownership of a simple green accordion. An interesting concept, and I look forward to reading this one. I looked for Crowley everywhere I went, basically, as well. And he wasn't super overrepresented anywhere, but I did pick up this. So he's the author of Little Big, which I read earlier this year. This is Lord Byron's novel, The Evening Land by John Crowley. I think it's about Lord Byron, obviously. Very interested to see how he handles that, because I expect it to be a little different from Little Big. I've had this on my TBR for a little while. This is The Brothers K by David James Duncan. This is a touching, uplifting novel, and it spans decades of loyalty, anger, regret, and love in the lives of the Chance family. So a big family saga, I think. The ever so wonderful Varsha sent me another birthday package this year, so thank you so much, Varsha. You are too generous. This is the first time I'm actually unwrapping this because I couldn't bring myself to do it before, so I'm taking it out of its plastic. She and I very much share a love for these retro sci-fi and fantasy book covers. She saw this one and she sent it over, and it is so beautiful. Look at that. So it's a short story collection, or an anthology rather, which was collected and edited by Ursula Le Guin and Virginia Kidd. And I think this anthology was born out of annoyance, which I can really get on board with. Le Guin was not happy with the anthologies that were being put together. So she was like, I'm going to do it myself. Every story is appearing here for the first time. Everyone is as unique an achievement as you would expect to find in the first anthology ever edited by Ursula K. Le Guin. And I believe it's even got like a Crowley story in here, Gene Wolfe story, James Tiptree Jr., but a lot of names that I'm less familiar with, which is always exciting. But yes, I'm looking forward to reading it, but I'm also looking forward to looking at it forevermore on my shelf. This can be one that faces out. I'm going to do some face outs, I think, on my future bookshelf. And this one definitely gets face out treatment, I think. And she also sent, I actually also love the sort of retro vibes of this cover, but she also sent over this Smiley little, it's a combination of two novellas, Ordinary Love and Goodwill. We all know I love Smiley. I think these are not as easy to get hold of, and I know that Varsha really particularly likes Goodwill. So I am looking forward to these as well. So thank you again, Varsha, for sending these over. I also received another lovely package from book club member Alishka, who's from Czechia, and she sent me some Czech books, some Czech novelists to read, which I'm also excited about. I've got The Unbearable Lightness of Being on my shelf, but she sent through The Joke, which I haven't heard of before. And apparently it was Milan Kundeра's first novel. And I really don't know much about this one. The blurb doesn't give too much away. And I feel like sometimes it's nice to go into a novel not knowing what to expect. Also a book by Miloš Urban. And this is called The Seven Churches, a Gothic novel of Prague. Written in the style of a literary thriller, but with an intriguing historical, even supernatural mystery at its core. The Seven Churches is set in the medieval new town of Prague. Here, Kay, a misfit policeman subject to extraordinary visions, witnesses a bizarre incident followed by a series of strange murders. As he digs deeper, evidence emerges to suggest that the murders are being committed by an assassin whose motives are rooted deep in the city's past. And then, of course, the classic, The Trial by Franz Kafka. I also think this edition is rather wonderful. So thank you so much to Alishka for sending those. I have been very spoiled. Whilst I was in Chicago, the New York Review of Books had their summer sale, which I remember being on last year. And I wanted to buy something, but the shipping costs are insane. So I was like, I'm going to make the most of this whilst I'm in America. I think it's like if you bought 3 books, you could get 40% off. So I bought in multiples of 3, and I ended up buying 9 books. We have The Long Ships, which I'd already admired in various different shops, by Frans G. Bengtsson. It's in Swedish originally, and it's a saga. It resurrects the fantastic world of the 10th century AD, when the Vikings roamed and rampaged from the northern fastnesses of Scandinavia down to the Mediterranean. I don't know, I haven't maybe read a Viking book since I was very young, so, or maybe ever. So yes, I am intrigued by this one. I also really like the cover. I mean, most NYRB covers are good. Occasionally you get a miss. I actually have 10 NYRBs because I picked this one up secondhand, and it's also, I think, going to be great for spooky season. So this is The Other by Thomas Tryon. Holland and Niles Perry are identical 13-year-old twins. They are close enough almost to read each other's thoughts, but they couldn't be more different. The summer goes on, and Holland's pranks become increasingly sinister. Niles finds he can no longer make excuses for his brother's actions. Thomas Tryon's best-selling novel about a homegrown monster is an eerie examination of the darkness that dwells within everyone. It is a landmark of psychological horror that is a worthy descendant of the books of James Hogg, Robert Louis Stevenson, Shirley Jackson, and Patricia Highsmith. I've got In the Heart of the Country by William H. Gass. This is 2 novellas and 3 short stories. They're all set in the Midwest, and together they offer a mythical reimagining of America's heartland, with its punching extremes of heat and cold, its endless spaces and claustrophobic households, its hidden and baffled desires, its lurking threat of violence. These stories scrape nerve and pierce the heart. They also replenish the language. They are told sparely, hauntingly, with compassion and a remarkable exploratory courage. That's what the New York Times said. Of Castle Gripsholm by Kurt Tucholsky is a short novel about an enchanted summer holiday. So the author, a polemical journalist during the last days of the Weimar Republic, chose in this, his only novel, to write about the pleasures of wine and women and the gratifications of friendship, and to do so in prose so luminous and exuberant that the bitterness of real life seems an intrusion. I've heard a lot about Stefan Zweig recently, I feel, and this is thought to be one of his best works. The great Austrian writer Stefan Zweig was a master anatomist of the deceitful heart, and Beware of Pity, the only novel he published during his lifetime, uncovers the seed of selfishness within even the finest of feelings. I also got Machines in the Head, selected stories by Anna Kavan. Anna Kavan is one of the great originals of 20th century fiction, comparable to Leonora Carrington and Jean Rhys, a writer whose stories explored the inner world of her imagination and plumbed the depths of her long addiction to heroin. Kavan's turn to science fiction in her final novel, Ice, is reflected in her late stories, and I think at least one of them are published here for the first time. So yes, this was another recommendation by Varsha. This is Chocky by John Wyndham, and he also was a science fiction author. This is his last book, I believe, and a little bit more reflective, sort of inward-looking than his other books. And it's about a young boy who has an imaginary friend, and the imaginary friend turns out to be not just an imaginary friend. We've got Woman Running in the Mountains by Yuko Tsushima. I've wanted to read this one for a little while. I've shortlisted it for book club a few times. Alone at dawn in the heat of midsummer, a young woman named Takiko Odaka departs on foot for the hospital to give birth to a baby boy. Takiko's first year as a mother is filled with the intense bodily pleasures and pains that come from caring for a newborn. At first she seeks refuge in the company of other women, in the hospital, in her son's nursery, but as the baby grows, her life becomes less circumscribed as she explores Tokyo, then ventures beyond the city into the countryside, toward a mountain that captures her imagination and desire for a wilder freedom. So this is this month's book club pick, so I'm really looking forward to this one. This is My Death by Lisa Tuttle. The narrator of Lisa Tuttle's uncanny novella is a recent widow, a writer adrift. Not only has she lost her husband, but her muse seems to have deserted her altogether. And yes, I think this book is about her writing about another woman, and then things starting to seem uncannily familiar about this other woman's life. I've heard it's good to go into this one without knowing too much. I think we could be on our final book. This is Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner. In Lolly Willows, Sylvia Townsend Warner tells of a single woman's struggle to break away from her controlling family. A classic story which she treats with cool, insubordinate intelligence, and to which she adds a visionary dimension of the strange. And that is it, everyone. That is my mammoth book haul. I shall not be buying any books for quite some time. I think of it as a celebration of my 30th, and that's why I let myself buy quite so many. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today, everybody, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye.